Welcome to the Wasatch Moto Overland channel. Today we're going to talk about my 2003 Toyota Sequoia. If you're thinking about purchasing one, or if you have one and you want to know a little bit more information about it, stick around and we're going to do an in-depth discussion of things that I love about this rig, the cons of it as well, and why you should buy a Toyota Sequoia first gen. So this is it. It's a 2003 Sequoia Limited, and this one, we've owned this for 5 years now, and it has just been, I can't even explain how awesome of a vehicle this has been. So just to give you a little bit of background, I was heavily searching the best used 4x4 SUV, and I owned 2 Honda CR-Vs. I was disappointed with the 4-wheel drive. I had a Chevy Yukon. I wasn't super impressed with it. I've also owned a couple Jeeps. I had a 4Runner briefly, an older 4Runner, but I'm going to be brutally honest when I say this. Like, this is the best vehicle I've ever owned. I've had a lot of vehicles in the past 10 years, and this is the longest I've ever owned a vehicle because it's fantastic. So I'm gonna do a walk around, show you some things that I really like about the Sequoia, things that you can look for if you're thinking about buying a Sequoia, and then I'll do a little bit of kind of what we're planning on doing with this setup as far as like overlanding and stuff. A couple of things that I appreciate about the Sequoia is, one, the comfort. The individual front suspension is just, it makes it really comfortable. So that's kind of a con. It's not as 4x4 like crazy off-roading friendly, but then again, if you own a Sequoia, you're probably not doing like crazy stuff. Like, that's not something that I'm super interested in. In terms of repairs, the Sequoia has 305,000 miles. I really haven't had to do hardly anything to this Sequoia. I will point out the things that I have done so that you guys are aware. I recently just did last year I did the timing belt. I went with an Aisin. That's basically the factory brand. Looks like it was replaced once before. I did that at $295. They say to do it around 90 to 100,000 miles. So that's kind of the major thing. These are interference motors. Some people say they're not, but I've done the research and they are interference motors. One thing to be aware of is the starter is right underneath the intake manifold. So that's kind of a pain if you ever have to replace it. I've never had to do it on this, but if the time comes, I will do a video on how to do that. I mean, it's definitely not a deal breaker. Like, that's kind of a dumb design, but it's engineered to where that component is not going to go out very often. One other thing, if you are looking at buying a Sequoia, something to note is that when you look underneath it, you might have oil on your front diff or on your steering rack, and I thought that the front diff was actually leaking, but as I inspected this further, the valve cover gaskets were leaking and seeping down onto the front diff. So make sure that it's actually what's leaking. In my case, if you're thinking about getting a Sequoia, it could be the valve cover gaskets, not the front diff, which is probably a pretty significant difference in terms of how much that repair is going to cost. So that's pretty much it under the hood. Just a few things that you can be aware of with this, with purchasing a Sequoia. One common thing apparently on these, I've never replaced them on this rig, but the lower ball joints. And another thing about Toyota is that they design their ball joints with 4 bolts. So they're way easier to replace than like a Chevy or a Ford. Replacing the lower ball joints is kind of a nightmare. You have to have like special tools. You don't with this, so that's definitely a huge plus. So one other thing that you definitely want to keep in mind if you are looking at purchasing a Sequoia, a first gen Sequoia, is the frame. So this one was recoated. There's still a little bit of rust, but you will know if you look under here and you see like really deep rust and, you know, rust holes, I would walk away from it. That's a common thing from the factory. I guess they didn't put some sort of coating on the frame, and there was a recall that was in effect for a certain time period. But once that recall time period lapsed, you kind of have to do the repair yourself. Some of them actually had the frames replaced. This one was recoated, and I know that because my factory wheels on the backside, there was like little black splatter marks from where they had recoated this frame. So while we're here, maybe we could just talk about the wheels and tires as far as fitment on this setup. So this Sequoia has a 3-inch spacer lift in the front and in the rear. So the tires are BfGoodrich all-terrain TK02 tires. They're a 285 75/17, and these are Rock Tricks racing wheels. I bought these on Amazon. I think they were like 130 bucks a piece, something like that. So far they've done really well. No spacers. I think these are an inch wider, or the offset was a little bit different, but I can get you that information. So just leave a question in the comments if you want to know more about that. These are the rock rails from Rocky Road Outfitters, based out of Heber, Utah. And the mounting system uses the factory mounts. And then these little bolts, the little tabs that come off the side, are considered their heavy duty mounting. So I opted for that, and they're really solid. So if we take this off road and hit some rocks with it, I have no doubts that it's going to do really good. So kind of the last common issue with Sequoias is the rear latch. This is a big, heavy tailgate, and a common issue is that this latch will break. I tried to find a metal latch, and I put it in, and it was, the issue changed. It wasn't the actual thing that broke, it was like the little lever that was bending because it was cheap. So I opted for the OEM latch assembly, and it's very easy to get to. You just pop this off and you have access under a metal plate there. So my advice on that, if you have an issue with it, is get the OEM one. Just spend the money, get the OEM, and you'll be good. So moving on to the inside here, I'm gonna go ahead and start this up, warm up a bit. It's a little bit chilly right now. So a couple of things that I really appreciate about this Sequoia is that, one, all of the electronics are, after 305,000 miles, the windows work, the locks, like all of the electronics are just really well engineered. In my experience with like Chrysler products and other brands, their electronics definitely seem to be lacking when it comes to just the longevity of them. So that's one thing I really like about the Sequoia. Our 4-wheel drive and our center diff lock is really nice to have with overlanding. This really gives you a lot more traction. The seat heaters are over here, and I apologize again, this is kind of dirty. The mirrors over here, all of that stuff works. One thing I did with this, because the blind spot is pretty big on this Sequoia, I got these guys on Amazon, and they are awesome. It pretty much eliminates your blind spot. One other thing that I really like, there's a huge center console. Obviously I'm not utilizing this well. I'm going to be kind of going through this whole thing and just reorganizing everything for camping. I've kind of been focusing on the back box, which I'll show you in just a second, that we built for this rig. Just a couple of other things. In terms of the amount of space back here, which I'll show you in a second, the Sequoia has a 3rd row seat, which means that the whole vehicle is just bigger. And so for that reason, it's better for, you know, overlanding, because there's just more space for storage, and especially if you're going to be sleeping inside the actual car. Another thing that I really like is just the abundance of cup holders. So there's 2 here, 2 more there, 2 in the doors, 2 more in the back area, which now is right by our bed, which is really cool. So there's 8 cup holders. I mean, I was pretty excited about that, but maybe I'm just weird. There's also an outlet in the very back, which is super handy for overlanding and sleeping in the back of the car, to have power there. I have another video that shows how to get power to that rear outlet when the key is off, because from the factory you have to have the key in order for that outlet to work. So I wanted to show the back as well. So this is the platform that we built, and just kind of have everything stowed away here, but there's also a video on how to build this. One of my first videos, pretty basic, nothing fancy. There's no rollers on these, it's just a waxed bottom. So we sanded this and waxed it, and they work really well. As you can tell, they slide really easy and they slide out really far. What I did was I put a block right here to where this cannot come out any further than this, and that's worked out really well. So yeah, that's our box. Got our outlet here, and these are the curtains that I built for this. I also have a video on that, so check it out if you've got a Sequoia. One thing that I was blown away by was I racked my brain trying to figure out how to make some curtains for this for privacy. And I had this paracord that I had initially set up all the way around, and it was just too low. Like there was a little gap here and people could potentially see in. And then it dawned on me that these little clips can just slide on this trim, and this will slide back and forth, and it makes it really easy to actually use this. So I have this set up just to show you kind of how it works here. Obviously there's no track here, so I just made a little thing there, but this can just kind of roll up and slide along that, which is super awesome. I was so stoked when I found those little clips. So I'll put that in the description. They were like 12 bucks for 50 of those. And as you can see, cup holders, storage, more storage here. So in terms of building a box, like this area is just awesome for storing, you know, your drinks or your phone or whatever, as you're using this. So I just made these modifications to this, and I'm really pleased with it. We put these flush mount brackets on, and then we also put these struts in. They're universal. I'll put these in the description as well. They work really well, holds it up, and it keeps this out of the way for when you're accessing your gear. Maybe if that gives you an idea on how to do your setup, hopefully it's helpful for you. I wanted to show you these two. These are amazing. I got these on Amazon. Again, I'll put the link for these in the description. So this creates an additional step for getting up here to access your cargo that you have up here. And it holds, I don't know what the weight capacity is, but I'm 195 pounds and I'm up here. It'll probably hold over 300 pounds. So the plan with our top here, these are removable, and you can utilize the bolts that hold this factory rack in place. There's one in the middle, 2 in the back, and 2 in the front on both sides. And I'm going to be coming out with a video here in just a little bit, probably in the next week or so, on how to build a homemade complete roof rack that goes all the way out to here. So it really allows you to have the best use of this top storage area. So you can have solar panels up there if you would like to, and other storage. And what we're going to be using for that is aluminum extrusion, which is what the Sherpa rack is built out of, and some of these other ones. It's all aluminum, it's lightweight, and it's really, really strong. Make sure you subscribe to the channel to get the information on how to build that, which can be done on any vehicle. It'll be specific to the Sequoia, but it can be built for any vehicle. So make sure you stay tuned for that. Trying to give you guys a good idea on, you know, pros and cons of the Toyota Sequoia. Overall, it is a huge win. I love this vehicle. I will probably never sell this vehicle because as the years go on, the demand for these is going to go up. Just like the Lexuses and the 100 series Land Cruiser, they're just becoming more and more valuable, just like my work truck. And I have zero reason to sell it. It's super reliable. It's never left us stranded, and it's very comfortable. So thanks again for watching, guys. I hope you found this video helpful. Do me a favor and click this little circle right here and hit the subscribe button. It just takes a second. It's completely free, and it just allows you to get this type of content on your home page, so you have access to it. It's there. If it interests you, hit the subscribe button, and it really helps me out. Hope you guys have a wonderful rest of the day. Happy camping, and we'll catch you on the next one. Later.